On an ordinary afternoon, a 14-year-old girl spotted an old man with tired eyes and a face worn by hunger sitting in the square. In a spontaneous gesture, she handed him her only sandwich, not imagining the consequences it would bring. However, when dawn broke the next day, she was surprised by the thunderous sound of a helicopter hovering over her house. Maya watched from the window with an expression of someone awaiting a secret to be revealed. Outside, the new city seemed small, as if whispering stories she had yet to know. At 14, Maya was a girl with curious eyes and a restless mind, but she also carried a sweet likeness and a compassionate heart, a silent inheritance from her mother, Aurelia. Aurelia, a strong-looking woman with decisive gestures, bore marks that only Maya noticed. She had brown hair that seemed to dance according to her mood and eyes that reflected a constant seriousness, almost an unrevealed mystery. Since they had moved to the city, Aurelia had avoided looking directly at Maya when mentioning the past. The only thing Maya knew was that since she was little, they had changed cities as if changing clothes, leaving behind any chance of stability. That morning, while Aurelia was organizing the remaining boxes from the move, Maya approached and sat on the couch. "Mom, why do we always move so much?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. Aurelia sighed, her gaze drifting somewhere beyond the room. "Maya, dear, some things don't need to be asked. It's better this way," she said, her tone gentle but final. Maya knew this answer well, but it never seemed sufficient. She wanted to know more about the father she had never met, about why Aurelia always seemed to be running from something. As her mother went back to packing and organizing, Maya watched her face, trying to decipher the mysteries hidden in the lines of worry on her forehead. In that moment, she realized something in Aurelia's fleeting gaze, something deeply hidden, something that seemed both dangerous and necessary at the same time. "Tomorrow is my birthday, Mom," Maya said, breaking the silence. Aurelia turned and gave a soft smile, but it seemed like the weight of the world was behind that smile. "I know, dear. We'll do something special. Just the two of us." The next morning, the soft light of the sun streamed through the window, bringing with it a rare moment of peace. Maya woke up to the smell of homemade bread that Aurelia was preparing in the kitchen. She got up, smiled at the mirror, and tried to imagine how that day could be different from other birthdays, which always felt lonely and distant. As she went down the stairs, she found the table simply decorated. There was a colorful tablecloth, a lit candle, and Aurelia placed a small box wrapped in silver paper at the center of the table. "Happy birthday, my love," Aurelia said, her voice choked. Maya noticed the shine in her mother's eyes, an emotion she didn't often see. She sat down, anxious, and picked up the box, feeling a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "Mom, thank you, but you didn't have to," she began shyly. "I know, dear, but you deserve it. I can't always give you everything I wish I could, but today is special," Aurelia replied, running her hand through her daughter's hair. Maya carefully opened the gift, revealing a delicate bracelet with a heart-shaped charm. She studied the piece, trying to grasp what was so special about this simple jewelry, until she noticed a discreet engraving with 2 letters, N.A. "What does it mean?" Maya asked, turning the charm between her fingers. Aurelia hesitated for a moment, her face taking on an expression of deep longing. "It's a reminder of our family, something for you to keep close," she said. Maya felt her heart race. Those letters seemed to carry a part of the story her mother never told her, but that she always sensed. She didn't ask anything more, fearing Aurelia would close the door on the conversation as she had so many times before. After breakfast, Maya put the bracelet on her wrist, feeling as if somehow that gift was a piece of the father she never knew or a secret she still couldn't comprehend. As she got ready for school, she still felt the weight of Aurelia's gaze on her. something between fear and love, as if her mother held secrets as deep as the engraving on the charm. On her way to school, Maya noticed the new bracelet shining on her wrist, fascinated by the mysterious engraving. She ran her fingers over the letters, trying to imagine who the original owner could be until a noise in front of her interrupted her thoughts. In the middle of the sidewalk, under a tree, sat a man dressed in worn clothes and holding a small bag. He seemed invisible to everyone passing by. As she approached, Maya realized how tired he looked, with slumped shoulders and a sunken face. Her first reaction was to quicken her pace, but something within her made her stop and stare at him for a moment. "Good morning," she said, her voice hesitating. The man slowly raised his face, surprised by the sudden kindness. He had a faint smile, almost hidden, and eyes that carried a silent sadness. "Good morning, little one. What's your name?" he asked, his voice hoarse but gentle. Maya hesitated, her mother's words about avoiding strangers echoing in her mind. But curiosity was stronger. "My name is Maya." The man smiled, and there was something familiar in his expression, as if they had met before. "That's a beautiful name, Maya. You know, you remind me of someone very special." His words intrigued her, and she felt that something within her needed to do more. Looking at her lunchbox, Maya decided to act before reason told her not to. "Do you want a sandwich?" she asked, extending the snack that her mother had lovingly prepared. He looked at her with a mix of surprise and gratitude. He accepted the sandwich carefully, as if it was something rare. "Thank you. Few people care to stop, much less to help," he said. For a moment, they were silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Before parting, Maya asked, "What is your name?" The man looked her in the eyes, hesitating. "Nikolai, but I think I've been out of people's lives for too long for a name to matter," he replied. Maya stood there, feeling a strange connection to that man. "Nikolai," the name echoed in her mind as she walked away, but when she looked back one last time, he had already vanished, as if he were just a shadow at the beginning of a mystery she couldn't even imagine yet. For the rest of the day, Maya could hardly concentrate in class. The encounter with Nikolai echoed in her mind, and something within her felt restless, as if a piece of a puzzle she never knew existed had been revealed. She wondered why he had said that she reminded him of someone special, and even more why that sad and familiar look had affected her so deeply. On her way home from school, Maya hoped to find him again in the same spot under the tree, but the place was empty, with no sign of him or any trace of his presence. Determined, she kept walking until she heard a low voice behind her. "You girl," Nikolai called almost in a whisper. She turned around and saw that he was there, near an alley with a serious look. He was holding the sandwich she had given him, still wrapped. Maya walked toward him, a bit hesitant, but her curiosity was greater than her fear. "Why didn't you eat it?" she asked, furrowing her brow. Nikolai smiled, a smile almost melancholic, and shook his head. "I wanted to keep it. It's not every day someone offers me something without wanting anything in return. Generosity is a precious thing," he said. Maya felt touched by his words. There was a kindness contained in each phrase, and something in his tone seemed to say more than he let on. Before she could respond, Nikolai stared intently at the bracelet on her wrist. "Where did you get this?" he asked, his voice suddenly filled with urgency. Maya stepped back a little, surprised by his reaction. "My mother gave it to me as a birthday present." "Why?" For a moment, Nikolai's expression filled with emotion, but he quickly masked it, looking at the ground. "Nothing. It just reminded me of something important," he murmured almost to himself. She didn't know what to think. Something about that question and Nikolai's reaction brought a new layer of mystery, as if the bracelet carried a truth he knew. Before leaving, Nikolai turned to her, letting slip one last enigmatic phrase. Some things are not what they seem, Maya. Take care of yourself and take care of that bracelet. It is more valuable than you imagine. And then, with slow and silent steps, he moved away into the darkness of the alley, leaving Maya with more questions than answers. When she got home, Maya still felt the weight of Nikolai's words. Why did he seem so disturbed when he saw the bracelet? Her mind was flooded with questions she couldn't answer. When she opened the door, she found Aurelia busy organizing documents on the kitchen table. She looked tired, with deep dark circles under her eyes, but still offered a warm smile when she saw her daughter. "How was your day, dear?" Aurelia asked, trying to appear unconcerned. "It was normal," Maya lied hesitantly. She sat at the table, looking at the bracelet on her wrist, feeling an increasing need to ask her mother about the meaning of those mysterious initials. Before she could say anything, Aurelia looked away from the papers and fixed her gaze on Maya with a more serious expression. "Maya, you know I'm saying this for your own good, but I need you to promise me one thing." "Of course, Mom," Maya replied, surprised by the intensity in Aurelia's tone. Aurelia took a deep breath, as if the next words would be painful. "I want you to go straight home after school, without stopping anywhere. And if you see anyone strange, especially near our house, avoid talking to them. We have a new life here, and I want to make sure nothing puts you at risk." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. She remembered Nikolai and how he had spoken to her, the emotion when he saw the bracelet. "Mom, why are we so careful? We never stay in one place for long. We never really get to know anyone." Aurelia looked away, avoiding the direct question. After a heavy silence, she finally responded with a tone of sadness in her voice. "Some things from the past are hard to leave behind, Maya. It's complicated. But the only thing you need to know is that everything I do is to protect you." "Protect from whom, Mom?" Maya insisted, feeling her heart race. She wanted to understand why there were so many precautions and who or what they were always running from. Aurelia hesitated, her eyes seeming distant, as if reliving a memory she would rather forget. "From people who do us harm and from a past I prefer to keep buried," she said. Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the secret her mother held. Deep down, she knew that this story was more complex than she could imagine, but she decided not to press further. As Aurelia returned to her papers, Maya wondered if that past, so carefully guarded, would one day come to light. That night, Maya could hardly sleep. Nikolai's words and her mother's worried look seemed to blend in her mind like an impossible puzzle to solve. She tossed and turned in bed, trying to push the thoughts away, but her curiosity was too intense. The next morning, as Maya walked toward school, she saw Nikolai again, but this time he was at the end of the street, near an alley. He was holding a cell phone, something that surprised her. She had never imagined a man like him, seemingly homeless, carrying a cell phone. She watched from a distance, unnoticed, while he appeared to be engaged in an urgent conversation. "Yes, I found her. All right, I'll wait for you," she heard Nikolai say, his voice low but tense. Maya hid behind a tree, trying to understand what he might be talking about. His expression was one of anxiety, which made her even more intrigued. She took a step forward, thinking of approaching him, but at that moment, Nikolai looked up, and their eyes met for a second. He stared at her, surprised, and then, as if realizing the significance of the moment, he quickly hung up the phone. "You shouldn't be here, Maya," he said, his voice sounding strangely gentle yet concerned. Maya took a deep breath, trying to hide her nervousness. I was just going to school." Nikolai watched her for a moment before looking away, as if he were pondering what he could say. "It's dangerous for you to be here," I didn't want you to know, but there are things happening that you wouldn't understand yet. Why are you saying this? Who are you really? Maya asked, her voice almost a whisper. Part of her wanted to hear an answer, but another part was filled with fear of the unknown. Nikolai sighed, as if carrying a weight too great for him to bear alone. I'm someone who knows you, Maya. Someone with a duty to protect something very important, something that involves you. Before she could ask another question, he stepped back and hid in the shadows of the alley, leaving Maya with a mix of fear and anxiety that she didn't know how to handle. She returned to the street and continued to school, but for the first time, she felt the path seemed darker, as if something was about to change in her life. When Maya came home from school that afternoon, the house was strangely silent. Aurelia was in the kitchen, washing dishes with a distant expression. Maya noticed that her mother seemed even tenser than usual, as if she were waiting for news that made her uneasy. She felt a weight in her heart as she remembered her encounter with Nikolai and the enigmatic conversation they had. "Hi, Mom," Maya said as she set her backpack on the floor and approached. Aurelia didn't respond immediately but stopped what she was doing and looked at Maya, forcing a smile. "Hi, dear. How was your day?" Aurelia asked, but there was a shadow in her eyes. Maya hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell everything about Nikolai, but another part feared her mother's reaction, especially with the warnings she had given her the day before. So, she tried to keep her voice light. It was normal. Aurelia dried her hands and sat at the table, indicating that Maya should do the same. The silence between them was heavy until Aurelia finally broke the moment, her voice slightly trembling. "Maya, I need to reinforce what I asked you yesterday. Promise me you'll go straight home after school, without stopping anywhere or talking to people you don't know. Promise me you'll obey me. Okay?" The request sounded like a plea, and Maya sensed the desperate tone in her mother's voice. Something inside her filled with fear but also with a need for answers. "Mom, why are you so worried? Is it because of the past? Is it about the father I never knew?" Aurelia fell silent, her eyes downcast. It was as if every word was an internal battle. When she finally raised her gaze to Maya, her face revealed a deep sadness. "Yes, in a way, there are things that you still shouldn't know, Maya, and some people who are dangerous to us." Maya felt her heart tighten upon hearing that. "Are these people still looking for us?" Aurelia sighed, running her hand over her face, as if she wanted to brush away dark thoughts. "Yes, and that's why we have to be careful. I would do anything to protect you, so please, obey what I say. It's all I ask." Maya nodded, but deep down in her heart, she knew she couldn't put the mystery aside. She promised, but Nikolai's words continued to echo in her mind, leaving her with a feeling that her mother's past, and now her own, was about to be revealed in a way she could never have imagined. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of a distant buzzing that grew louder as it approached. She opened the window and saw, incredulously, a helicopter landing in the vacant lot near her house. Dust and dry leaves swirled around the aircraft, and Maya, fascinated, watched as a tall, elegant man descended with firm, decisive steps. He was wearing an impeccable suit, something that stood in stark contrast to the simple neighborhood they lived in. Maya's heart began to race when she realized the man was walking toward her house. She hurried down the stairs and saw Aurelia standing at the door, her face pale and her eyes fixed on the stranger. "Mom, who is he?" Maya asked, still unable to believe what she was seeing. Aurelia didn't answer. She seemed paralyzed, as if the presence of that man was a ghost from the past resurrecting unexpectedly. He stopped a few steps from the door, looked at Aurelia with a slight smile, but his eyes maintained a seriousness that made it clear this visit was not merely friendly. "Aurelia, it's a pleasure to finally see you." the man said in a tone that mixed nostalgia and authority. Aurelia took a deep breath and looked at the man with a coldness Maya had never seen before. "Sebastian, I thought I'd never see you again." Sebastian nodded, glancing at Maya before turning his gaze back to Aurelia. "It's not exactly the kind of reunion I imagined, but our story has needed a resolution for a long time, don't you think?" Maya felt lost amidst those enigmatic words. It was as if she were trapped in a movie scene, yet at the same time, she knew this was a reality that now enveloped her. Sebastian turned his gaze to her, and Maya felt a shiver, as if he knew something about her that even she didn't understand. "I imagine this is Maya," he said, still with that strange tone. "The daughter you tried to protect for so long. Leave her out of this," Aurelia replied quickly, with fierce determination. "If you came because of her, it's better to turn back right now." Sebastian chuckled softly, as if Aurelia's challenge were futile. "I'm not here to hurt anyone, Aurelia. I came to clarify truths you've tried to hide. She deserves to know, and you know that." Aurelia hesitated, and Maya noticed the conflict on her face. It was evident that Sebastian carried a piece of the past that she had fought so hard to conceal. She turned to Maya, her expression inscrutable, as if calculating the next steps. "Maya," Aurelia began, her voice trembling, "I need you to go to your room." Maya felt a wave of frustration and sadness. This was unfair, she thought. Sebastian was there with answers she longed to know, and once again her mother was trying to hide them. But before she could protest, Sebastian raised his hand, asking for patience. "Let her stay, Aurelia. She's old enough to understand some things," Sebastian said with a calmness that contrasted with Aurelia's nervousness. Aurelia bit her lips, conflicted, but eventually nodded. She seemed to know that she couldn't hide forever. "Maya, it's possible that your mother never told you, but there was a life before you. A life where she was part of a very influential family. I was a friend, someone who always admired your mother and the way she fought for what she believed in." "A friend?" Maya asked, trying to understand what that information meant. Sebastian continued, his voice soft but laden with something that felt like regret. "Yes, your mother and I were very close, and there was another person, someone she loved deeply, a man named Nikolai." Maya felt the world stop for a moment. Nikolai, the man she had encountered on the street, the man who seemed to know more about her than any stranger should. "Nikolai, the man I met. He said he knew me." Aurelia ran her hand over her face, exhausted, but did not deny it. Sebastian nodded slowly, observing both of their reactions. "Yes, Maya. Nikolai is your father," Sebastian revealed with a final tone that echoed in the silence that followed. "Your mother and he were forced to separate due to painful circumstances." Maya was paralyzed, trying to process the information. She felt the weight of the lies, the omissions all colliding at once. Why? Why was he never present? Why didn't anyone tell me anything about him? Aurelia held Maya's hand, her eyes brimming with tears. "It was to protect you, my love. I would do anything to keep you safe, and keeping Nikolai out of our lives was the only way I found to protect you." Sebastian stepped forward, fixing his gaze on Maya. "Your mother did what she thought was necessary, Maya, but perhaps now it's time for you to know the truth. There's so much about your past that needs to be revealed, and Nikolai wants you to know. That's why I came back." Maya felt the ground slip away beneath her feet. The pieces of the puzzle, which she hadn't even known existed, were now forming an image that left her both scared and intrigued. She looked at her mother, searching for some hidden truth in her face, but Aurelia just seemed exhausted. The revelation still pulsed in Maya's mind as silence hung in the room. She stared at her mother, her heart heavy with the discovery that Nikolai was her father. The mystery surrounding her life was finally unraveling, but the relief she had hoped to feel was mixed with a sense of betrayal and confusion. Sebastian, attentive to both of their reactions, spoke softly. "Nikolai is waiting to see you, Maya. He has longed for this meeting for years." Aurelia closed her eyes, her face marked by internal struggle. She opened her mouth to protest, but seeing Maya's anxious gaze, she took a deep breath, resigned. In a faint voice, Aurelia whispered, "If this is what you want, Maya, if you want to meet your father, I won't stop you." Maya nodded, her heart racing. "I need to know who he is, Mom. I need to understand this part of me that you've always kept secret." Sebastian smiled slightly and, with an inviting gesture, indicated that she should follow him. Maya turned one last time to her mother, as if silently asking for confirmation. Aurelia merely nodded, and Maya understood that this was the permission she had been waiting for. She and Sebastian walked in silence to the helicopter, where they boarded for the location where Nikolai was waiting. As they flew over the city, Maya looked down at the world below, reflecting on everything she was about to discover. Every time she tried to imagine what her father's face would look like, her mind went back to the man she had seen on the street, with eyes that hid as many truths as her mother's. Shortly after, they landed at a small helipad. Sebastian led Maya down a path to a clearing surrounded by ancient trees, and there, leaning against a sturdy tree, was Nikolai. He lifted his head upon hearing their approach, and Maya felt her heart leap at the sight of the familiar face that now meant so much more than she could have imagined. Nikolai straightened up, his face illuminated by contained emotion, and opened a soft, albeit hesitant, smile. "Maya," he said. She stopped a few steps away, staring at him. "Are you really my father?" Nikolai nodded, emotional. "Yes, Maya, I am. And there hasn't been a day when I didn't dream of this moment, of the chance to tell you who I am." They stood looking at each other for a long moment, as if words were not enough to express the magnitude of that meeting. Then, Nikolai opened his arms and Maya, overwhelmed with emotion, ran to hug him, feeling a mix of fear and comfort at finally meeting the father who, until then, had only been a painful absence. With his arms around her, Nikolai whispered, "Forgive me for all the lost time, but now I am here for you, and I hope we can rebuild what was taken from us." As they held the embrace, Maya felt Nikolai's heart beating fast, as if in that instant, all the weight of the years of separation was dissolving. He gently released her, holding her shoulders to observe her with a look that mixed pride and regret. "How you've grown so much, Maya," he said with a smile that carried a hint of sadness. "I never wanted it to be this way, distant from me. There was so much I couldn't control." Maya looked at her father's face, absorbing every detail, the fine lines around his eyes, the marks of time, and the hard life he seemed to have lived. He was the same man who had seemed like a stranger under that tree, but now he was a familiar presence, awakening new and complex feelings. Why were you never here?" Maya asked, trying to contain the pain in her voice. "I always wanted to know more about my father, about who he was. Mom never told me anything, and I started to think that maybe you chose to stay away." Nikolai gently squeezed her shoulders, his eyes misty. "I would never have chosen to stay away from you, Maya. I was away for a reason that your mother believed was necessary to protect you. She sacrificed so much to ensure your safety and to hide you from a life she thought would bring danger." Maya felt a mix of anger and understanding. "But what about you? Why did you never try to find me?" Nikolai sighed, running a hand through his hair with an air of exhaustion. "I tried, Maya. For years, I tried to find you both. But whenever I got close, your mother disappeared again. She became a master at keeping me away, and over time, I began to think that maybe it was better this way, that perhaps it was the best way to protect you even though it hurt me. His words sounded sincere, and Maya couldn't help but believe him. There was a real anguish in every word, a regret he seemed to have carried for years. She took a deep breath, trying to absorb everything. "So you knew I existed all along?" "Every second," Nikolai replied with a serious expression. "I thought of you every moment, wondering how you were growing up, if you smiled, if you were happy. And now that I'm here, I can see that you are more than I could ever imagine." He gave her a trembling smile, and Maya felt a spark of hope warm her heart. His presence there felt like a miracle, a chance she never thought she'd have. She took his hand, wanting to know more about the life that had been hidden from her. "There is so much you still need to know, Maya, but I promise that this time, I won't go anywhere," he said. And upon hearing those words, Maya felt, for the first time, that perhaps that part of her story she longed to understand was finally about to unfold before her. On her way home, Maya's heart still pulsed with the emotions of the meeting with Nikolai. She could barely contain the whirlwind of thoughts and questions swirling in her mind. She wanted to share everything with Aurelia, but upon seeing her mother's rigid expression as she opened the door, she realized that this conversation would not be easy. Aurelia looked at Maya for a moment and, without saying anything, turned and walked toward the living room. Sitting on the couch with an expression that mixed sadness and guilt, Maya hesitated but followed her mother, sitting across from her. "You found him, didn't you?" Aurelia asked, breaking the silence, her voice low and almost powerless. Maya nodded, her heart tight. "Yes, Mom, I found my father. He told me he tried to find me, that it wasn't his choice to stay away." Aurelia took a deep breath, looking down at the floor as if she couldn't face the intensity of her daughter's words. "I know it seems cruel, Maya, but I did it for you, to protect you from a life that I thought would be too dangerous." "Protect from what?" Maya insisted, feeling her voice choke. "Protect from my own father? He is a good person, Mom. All he wanted was to be with me, to know me." Aurelia turned her gaze to Maya, and for the first time, tears began to flow down her face. "You don't understand, Maya. Your grandmother, Nikolai's mother, is a powerful woman who would do anything to gain control over you, over your life. She didn't want me to be with Nikolai, and when you were born, she vowed that one day you would be hers, that she would raise you in the way she deemed right. I couldn't allow that." Maya leaned back a little, trying to absorb what her mother had said. "So all of this was because of her? Out of fear of someone I've never seen, of a person I didn't even know existed?" Aurelia slowly nodded, still wiping away her tears. "Yes, my love. I knew that if Nikolai stayed in our lives, sooner or later she would find us, and I couldn't take that risk. Maybe I made mistakes. Maybe I was unfair, but everything I did was thinking of you." Maya felt a mixture of empathy and pain. It was as if she finally understood the reason for so many years of silence and escape, but that did not erase the emptiness of all those lost moments. She looked at her mother with a gaze filled with sadness and hurt. "Mom, I understand that you wanted to protect me, but why didn't you ever tell me? Why didn't you trust me to understand all of this?" Maya asked, her voice choked. Aurelia simply lowered her head, unable to respond. Deep down, Maya knew that even with all the answers, the past could not be changed. But now that she had the chance to know the other half of her story, she felt determined to discover who she was, without secrets, without lies. In the days that followed, Maya felt the tension grow between her and Aurelia. The revelation about her grandmother, the powerful and manipulative figure who had influenced so much of her parents' lives, wouldn't leave her mind. She knew that this woman, whom she had never known, had been the reason for her separation from Nikolai and for the life of escapes and secrets that Aurelia had built. Nikolai arranged another meeting with Maya, and this time, She was more determined to find out what had really happened between her parents and the woman who had shaped so much of her story. They met at a discreet cafe, where Nikolai was waiting for her with an expression somewhere between relief and anxiety. When Maya sat down across from him, he began to speak before she could ask any questions. "There are things about our family that your mother never wanted you to know, and for a long time I agreed with her," Nikolai began, looking directly into Maya's eyes. "My mother, your grandmother, is a complex woman. She got used to having control over everything and everyone. When she found out that I was in love with Aurelia, who came from a humble family without the influence she deemed essential, she did everything to keep us apart." "But you loved each other?" Maya whispered, trying to understand how something so strong could be destroyed. "Yes," Nikolai said with a melancholic look, "and that's why we tried to resist, but she turned our lives into a hell. She threatened Aurelia in every possible way, saying that she would never allow you to be raised outside the standards of our family, that you would have to follow the path she chose." Maya felt a shiver. The idea of having her life controlled by someone she had never known was terrifying. "So that's why Mom ran away? She wanted to protect me." Nikolai nodded, his face reflecting the pain of each memory. "Your mother did what she thought was best, and over time, I realized that it might have been the right thing because my mother never gave up on the idea that you belonged to her, as a symbol of our lineage." "Is she still looking for me?" Maya asked, her voice choked. Nikolai took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I don't know for sure, but I fear she is. That's why Sebastian has come back to us. He believes my mother may be close to finding us, and we need to decide what we will do." Maya felt the weight of the situation fall on her. Finally, all the pieces were coming together, but that only made the dilemma more frightening. She looked at her father, seeking strength in his eyes. "I don't want to live in fear, Dad. I want to know my own story, to understand who I am without hiding." Nikolai watched her with a mix of pride and concern. "Then that's what we will do, Maya. But know that this choice may bring consequences." Days later, Maya, Nikolai, and Aurelia gathered at the same discreet cafe where Maya had spoken with her father. The atmosphere was heavier than ever, with the three aware that Sebastian's presence would soon bring complex decisions. Upon arriving, they saw Sebastian already waiting, with the same calculating and serious expression as before. He greeted them with a restrained nod, and Maya noticed the concern in his gaze. "Thank you for coming, Aurelia," Sebastian said without any preamble. "We need to talk about Maya's future and how we will ensure her safety." Aurelia watched him closely, trying to gauge Sebastian's intentions from the beginning. "I tried to protect my daughter from this family plot. I never imagined my choice would come back to haunt us." Sebastian leaned forward with a grave expression. "Your choice kept her safe for a while, Aurelia, but things have changed. Nikolai's mother, our matriarch, still believes that Maya is a key piece for the continuity of the family's influence. She wants Maya to take on the family legacy at any cost, and believe me, she is closer than we think." Maya felt a shiver run through her body. Taking on a legacy that was not what she wanted for herself, and she never imagined being seen as part of a larger plan. "And what do you suggest, Sebastian?" Nikolai asked, crossing his arms with a tense expression. "How can we stop my mother from reaching her?" Sebastian took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "We need to make her invisible, at least to the eyes of the matriarch. I know the means to create a new identity for Maya, to distance her from this circle, and ensure that she can live the life she wants, far from all of this." Aurelia looked at him with suspicion. "Hide my daughter again so she can live in fear, unable to be who she is? I did that for years, Sebastian, and maybe it was for the best. But Maya deserves a life without having to hide." "I understand what you mean, Aurelia," Sebastian replied with a tone of understanding. But if we want Maya to be free, we need to make difficult decisions now. Maya looked at each of them, trying to absorb the idea that her life could change completely. And what if I want to confront this woman? She asked with a courage she didn't even know she had. Nikolai frowned. Maya, my mother is a person who manipulates everyone around her. She doesn't think twice about destroying whatever or whoever is in her way. I can't let you face this battle alone. Sebastian nodded. Maya, if you choose to confront her, you need to understand that it may change your life in ways you might not be able to control. But if that's what you want, we'll be by your side. After the tense meeting at the cafe, Maya spent the following days lost in thought. She knew her decision would influence not only her future but that of her entire family. Confronting the matriarch meant leaving behind the life she knew and perhaps facing dangers she couldn't foresee. However, continuing to run away felt like living trapped in the shadows of a past she never chose. One afternoon, while walking through the park to clear her mind, Nikolai appeared silently beside her, matching her steps. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Maya, I know the decision is yours, but I want you to know that I'm here for whatever you need, he said in a calm tone. I will protect you, no matter what happens. Maya looked at her father, feeling the strength of that commitment. Throughout her life, she had dreamed of having a present father figure, someone she could trust, and now he was there, offering the support she had always wanted. I know, Dad. Thank you, she replied, feeling the weight of responsibility. But wherever I go, I need to understand what this connection to our family means. I need to face this in order to be free. Nikolai nodded, respecting Maya's courage. Then we need to prepare. My mother, your grandmother, she won't give up easily. She doesn't accept being contradicted. Maya stopped and looked into her father's eyes. What exactly does she expect from me? Why am I so important? Nikolai hesitated for a moment, as if searching for the right words. You are the heir to a tradition, to an influence that spans generations. My mother believes that you, as a direct descendant, are the key to reinforcing this lineage, to strengthening what she has built. She sees in you a symbol, and symbols, to her, are power. Maya's heart raced. The idea of being treated as a symbol, something that represented power and control, was terrifying. But I am not a symbol. I am a person. I want a life that is mine and not a reflection of ambitions I don't even understand. Nikolai smiled, proud of his daughter's determination. Then that's what we'll do, Maya. We'll face this together. We'll show her that you are more than just a pawn in her game. With Maya's decision made, Sebastian, Nikolai, and Aurelia came together to devise a plan that would ensure her safety while confronting the matriarch. Gathered in the living room of Aurelia's house, they detailed each step, aware that the slightest mistake could be dangerous. Maya, we know you want to stay strong, but it's essential that every detail of this plan is followed to the letter, Sebastian said with a serious expression. Your grandmother is not a woman who reacts well to surprises. We need to anticipate her every move. Aurelia crossed her arms, visibly anxious. I agree. The confrontation should take place in an environment we can control. I don't want Maya to be vulnerable. Nikolai nodded, understanding the concern of his daughter's mother. My mother has never admitted defeat, but if Maya shows up in front of her as the heir she has always wanted, maybe we can use that to our advantage. Maya listened attentively, trying to absorb the seriousness of the situation. She knew her grandmother was an intimidating figure, but she was determined to make it clear that she would not be shaped by anyone's desires. So, how are we going to do this? Maya asked, her voice firm. Sebastian spread a map across the table. I know the matriarch's central office, a property she rarely leaves. She feels untouchable there. If we can secure an audience with her, we can propose an agreement, something that forces her to respect your choices and leave you alone. Aurelia looked skeptical. And what if she doesn't accept? What if she sees this as a challenge? Sebastian pressed his lips together, reflecting. In that case, we'll use the media. The matriarch has a reputation to uphold, and the world has never seen her true face. If we expose the threats she has made, public pressure could be our advantage. Maya nodded, beginning to understand the complexity of the plan. I know it will be difficult, but I want to confront my grandmother. I need to tell her that my life belongs to me. Nikolai placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. We will support you in every word, Maya. You are stronger than she imagines, and maybe that will be enough to disarm her. Sebastian looked at the three of them with a determined expression. Then it's decided. Tomorrow we will go to her. We will make her listen to us and, above all, respect Maya's choice. The next morning, Maya, accompanied by Nikolai, Aurelia, and Sebastian, headed to the imposing building where her grandmother, the matriarch, commanded business and exercised her influence. The building, with mirrored glass windows and enhanced security, was a physical expression of power. As they crossed the entrance, Maya felt the weight of that formal and cold environment, a space that seemed to reflect the very spirit of the woman they were about to face. Upon entering the reception, they were greeted by an assistant who, without asking questions, led them to a spacious and luxurious room. There was a long table with leather chairs, walls decorated with artwork, and the subtle but oppressive perfume that permeated the air. Seated at the head of the table was the woman Maya knew to be her grandmother. She was an austere figure with perfectly styled silver hair, wearing an elegant suit that seemed tailor-made to exude authority. Her gaze passed over each of them, a mix of curiosity and disdain. When her eyes fixed on Maya, she gave a faint, calculated smile. Maya, the woman said, as if savoring the name. Finally, my granddaughter has deigned to meet me. Maya took a deep breath, trying to contain the mix of emotions exploding inside her. I'm here to make something clear, ma'am. My life, my choices are mine, and I will not bend to what you want. The matriarch raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by Maya's audacity, but maintained her smile. Oh dear, you have the strength of my blood. That is undeniable. But it seems you still do not understand the magnitude of our family, what we are, and what we represent. Aurelia, who had been silent until then, stepped forward. Leave her alone, Evelina. Maya is not a symbol or a piece in your power game. She is a person, my daughter, and she deserves to live as she wishes. Evelina let out a low laugh, as if she found that declaration naive. Aurelia, you've always been the same. And look, you ended up running away, never understanding the privilege that was granted to you and your daughter. Maya is part of our lineage. She is the heir, the continuation of everything we have built, and nothing will change that. Nikolai finally spoke up, his face composed but determined. Mother, it's time to end this illusion. Maya does not belong to you, and she is not here to uphold your legacy. She is here to demand that you leave her in peace. Evelina crossed her hands on the table, looking at each of them as if analyzing pieces on a chessboard. I am the reason you exist, Maya, she said, turning her gaze back to her granddaughter. And you owe me a debt. Do not underestimate what I can do if you choose to challenge me. But Maya did not back down. She knew she needed to face this moment with courage. I owe you nothing, she said, her voice firm. You have played no part in my life, and I will not allow you to now either. You accept that my life is mine, or you will face the consequences of continuing to try to control me. Sebastian, who had remained silent until then, stepped forward, looking threatening. Evelina, Maya is willing to make public everything she has gone through because of you. I imagine you don't want your name tarnished by that." Evelina's face tightened for a moment, and Maya realized that her power lay in appearances and control. The realization that Maya was willing to expose her tactics seemed to disarm her. She let out a long sigh, and her expression hardened. "So it will be," Evelina said with a glacial look. "You choose to flee from what you could conquer, from the power you would have by my side. Very well. Know, however, that this decision has a price." As they left Evelina's building, Maya felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She was glad to have finally confronted her grandmother, but she knew that the battle was not completely won. Nikolai, Aurelia, and Sebastian walked beside her in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached the parking lot, Nikolai stopped and looked at Maya with a firm expression. "You were amazing in there," he said with a proud smile. "Facing my mother is not easy for anyone, and you did it with courage." Maya smiled slightly, feeling the weight of the tension begin to dissipate. "I couldn't have done it without you by my side. But what do we do now? She clearly won't give up that easily." Sebastian interjected, analyzing the situation with his usual pragmatism. "We need to act carefully. Evelina is dangerous and may try other ways to interfere. I suggest we follow the plan of giving Maya a new identity, at least temporarily, until we can ensure she won't harm us." Aurelia frowned, visibly uncomfortable with the idea. "I hate the idea of hiding her again, but maybe it is the safest option until we're sure Evelina no longer poses a threat." Maya listened silently, feeling torn. On one hand, she longed for a quiet and simple life, away from her grandmother's power game. On the other, she knew that running again would keep her trapped in a cycle she was desperately trying to escape. "I know this sounds risky," she said, looking at them all, "but maybe it's time for me to create a new life, a life where I can be who I truly am without having to hide. My grandmother may be powerful, but I can't let fear keep me trapped." Nikolai placed a hand on her shoulder, offering silent support. "If that's what you want, Maya, we will stand by you, but we must be careful. The world Evelina built is vast, and her influence can reach farther than we imagine." Sebastian nodded. "We can at least take some security measures. I'll make sure Maya has the resources she needs to establish herself independently, while we keep an eye out for any moves from the matriarch." Aurelia finally relented. "I just want to see you happy, Maya. Whatever path you choose, I will be here." In the months that followed, Maya began to build an independent life, finally free from the shadows of the past. She moved to a small town, out of her grandmother's immediate reach, but where she could still keep in touch with her parents. Aurelia and Nikolai visited her frequently, helping her create an environment that truly felt like hers, while Sebastian ensured that any attempt by Evelina to interfere in her new life was intercepted. Despite the initial fear, Maya found solace in the simple routine and the freedom to explore her own interests. She studied, made new friends, and for the first time, began to feel she could leave the family intrigues behind. One morning, while organizing some books on her newly purchased shelf, Maya received a call from Sebastian. His voice sounded cautious, but there was a hint of excitement, as if he had unexpected news. "Maya, I wanted you to know, Evelina publicly announced that she is stepping away from the business," he said with a slight tone of relief. "It seems that the threats and pressure we created finally had an effect. She decided to keep her distance, at least for now." Maya felt a mix of relief and surprise. "So, does this mean I'm really free?" "For now, yes, but we need to remain vigilant. Evelina always has a backup plan, but this is the biggest chance we've had in years to ensure your safety and freedom." Maya thanked him, feeling a huge weight lifted off her shoulders. That news represented the beginning of true independence, without having to constantly look over her shoulder. That night, she shared the news with Aurelia and Nikolai, who were relieved, even though they remained cautious. "I'm proud of you, Maya," Aurelia said with an emotional smile. "You faced all of this with courage, and now, finally, you have the life you always deserved." Nikolai nodded in agreement. "This is your chance to build your own legacy, Maya, one that doesn't depend on anyone's ambitions but your own." Maya hugged her parents, feeling surrounded by the support and love she had longed for. Finally, she felt she had control over her own destiny. And as she looked out the window at the new city she now called home, she knew this was just the first page of a new story. With the weight of the past finally lifted, Maya began to make plans for the future. She decided to return to her studies, immersing herself in an area that had always fascinated her: visual arts. The idea of being able to express her own story through canvases and colors motivated her every day. In the small studio she set up in her apartment, she spent hours exploring the new world opening up before her. On one of those painting afternoons, Maya was surprised by an unexpected visit. Nikolai and Aurelia arrived with a sparkle in their eyes and a small wrapped box, which they placed in her hands with a contained smile. "Maya," Nikolai began with an emotional look, "we found something that we believe you should have now." Upon opening the box, Maya found an old photograph of young Aurelia and Nikolai, embracing and smiling. She recognized the scene as being from a time before all the family conflicts, before any separation or escape. The photograph seemed to capture the pure love that had united them and, despite everything, was now being reborn through her. "This is the beginning of your story, Maya," Aurelia said, wiping away a tear that escaped. "We wanted you to have this, to remember that, regardless of the difficulties, you are the result of true love." Maya held the photo tenderly and smiled, feeling an indescribable peace. It was as if, in that moment, every piece of her life was finally in place. She knew that the past would always be a part of who she was, but with the love and support of her family, she also had the freedom to build the future she desired. In the following months, Maya dedicated herself to her art, always inspired by the strength she found in her story. Each canvas represented a piece of her journey: the search, the fear, the courage, and finally, the freedom. Her works began to gain recognition in the local community, and Maya felt that she was truly leaving her own mark on the world. The life she was now building was, at last, her own. With every brush stroke, every new plan, Maya knew she was where she had always wanted to be, in control of her destiny, with the certainty that her parents' love and her own courage had brought her to this point. And as she faced a new blank canvas, ready to be filled, she knew her story was just beginning.